Did you know there is a cheese that has been made in the Alps since the Middle Ages, and that, despite its humble and rustic appearance, holds secrets that very few know? Hello, I am Dr. Cheeselover, and today I'm going to talk to you about a true Alpine treasure, Tomme de Savoie cheese. But stay with me, because later you will discover how this cheese was key to the survival of entire communities, and how its rind, let's say somewhat ugly, hides a wealth of flavors that will surprise you and please you immensely. So, if you are ready for the journey, let's go. Tomme de Savoie cheese is one of the oldest cheeses in France and has roots that date back to the Middle Ages. It originated in the Savoie region, in the heart of the French Alps. Unlike other cheeses made for royalty, Tomme de Savoie was a cheese made by farmers for their own consumption, crafted from the milk left over after butter was made. In times of scarcity, this modest yet rich cheese became a staple in the diet of the mountain dwellers of that time, providing essential nutrients. Despite its origins, Tomme de Savoie received a protected geographical indication and is recognized worldwide as an emblematic product for its quality and simplicity. But what makes this seemingly simple cheese have such a complex flavor? Well, the answer to this question lies in its production, and above all, in its rind. I'll tell you shortly. Tomme de Savoie is a clear example of how well-executed simplicity can yield extraordinary results. It is primarily made with raw cow's milk, sourced from local breeds such as Tarentaise, Abondance, and Montbéliard. These cows are fed on alpine pastures, which impart a characteristic richness and microbial diversity to the cheese. The process begins by heating the milk to about 32 to 34 degrees Celsius and adding mesophilic lactic cultures, such as Lactococcus lactis, along with the natural indigenous flora of the raw milk. This develops a unique aromatic complexity in the cheese. After a brief resting period for acidification, animal rennet is added to coagulate the milk, and then it is left to rest for about 30 to 45 minutes, or until the curd makes a clean cut, reaching a pH of approximately 6.4. Once the curd has formed, it is cut into grains between 1 to 2 centimeters to maintain good moisture retention. This moisture is characteristic of Tomme de Savoie. The curd, once cut, is left to rest to release whey, and then it is gently stirred and heated a second time to 38 degrees Celsius to promote whey expulsion and allow the curd to compact a little more. Okay, now care must be taken not to dry the curd too much. Then a partial whey removal is performed, leaving still a bit of whey to maintain the desired texture of Tomme de Savoie cheese. And at that moment, the pH should be roughly between 6.2 to 6.3. Then, the curd is molded and pressed in 2 phases. The first phase involves applying an initial pressure of 0.5 to 1 kg per centimeter squares, left for 20 minutes. Then the pressed curd is taken out of the mold, flipped, and pressed again, applying this time a pressure of between 1.5 and 2 kg per centimeter for several hours. Okay, this helps consolidate the mass without completely eliminating the small cavities that will form, or typical eyes in the cheese. These cavities are mechanical holes, okay, because the pressure is not very high. The next day, the pH of the cheese should be around 5.2 to 5.4. Okay, after it is taken out of the mold, indicating good acidification. Now, once pressed and unmolded, the cheese goes to the salting phase, which is done by immersion in brine at a concentration of 20 to 22% salt. Salting is done over a period of 8 to 48 hours, but that will depend on the size of the cheese we are making. This stage not only adds flavor to the cheese, but also contributes to the development of the rind and the regulation of internal microbial activity, which means that the cheese is protected by the level of salt. That is, the salt protects the cheese. Okay? Finally, Tomme de Savoie must undergo a maturation process that lasts from 1 to 3 months in cool cellars. During the first week, the cheese is turned daily to allow it to dry, and then, when it forms the rind, it is placed to mature. Okay, in those cool cellars at a temperature of 8 to 12 degrees Celsius, with a relative humidity of 85 to 90%. Now, during that period, the cheeses must be turned regularly, and in some cases, the rind is rubbed with brine to promote the growth of Brevibacterium linens, which is another organism that must be used to make this cheese, okay? This Brevibacterium gives the cheese its characteristic rustic appearance and intense flavor. This cheese tends to smell quite strong, And as it matures, the cheese will develop a flexible paste with small irregular eyes and a flavor profile that evolves from fresh dairy notes to complex nuances of nuts, herbs, and a subtle earthy touch. That is the profile the cheese should have. Okay? Does it seem interesting to you? Well, wait until you discover how this unattractive rind is responsible for a flavor that will transport you directly to the Swiss Alps, and I'll explain it to you right now. If you have enjoyed the video so far, I invite you to share it with your friends and family so that everyone can learn to make this French cheese. I also invite you to subscribe and activate the notification bell. And as I was saying, regarding the rind, I tell you that Tomme de Savoie is a cheese that deceives the eye but enchants the palate. Its natural rind is thick, rough, and has certain grey tones with mold spots. But don't be fooled by its physical appearance, or let's say, rustic look, because the cheese is more or less ugly, because what is inside the cheese is pure delicacy, an ivory or pale yellow paste. The texture of this cheese is semi-hard, with an elasticity that is, let's say, pleasant to the eye, and when you cut it, you will notice small, irregular holes known as cheese eyes. Tomme de Savoie has a mild yet deep flavor, with notes of nuts, wild herbs, and a hint of fresh butter. It also has a slightly tangy finish that tries to cleanse the palate, and you are probably wondering, how can I enjoy this cheese to the fullest? I'm going to give you some pairings and tips. Okay, including one that you probably have never tried, and that will enhance the flavors of the cheese in a way that will surprise you. So I invite you to keep watching the video. Well, to pair the cheese, let me tell you first that Tomme de Savoie is incredibly versatile and is perfect for both a cheese board and for including in traditional French recipes. For example, if you want to use a drink, you can use fresh white wines like Apremont or a Chignon Bergeron from Savoie, which enhance the balanced acidity of the cheese. You can also use a light red wine like Pinot Noir or Gamay. These soft wines also work very well with this cheese. Are you up for trying it with cider? The combination of the acidity of the cider with the creaminess of the cheese is simply spectacular. Now, to accompany it, you can pair it with rye bread or a crispy baguette. You can also use fresh fruits such as figs, green apples, or perhaps you could also use grapes or strawberries. You can also use mountain honey or regular honey. You can also use Manuka honey, which is from New Zealand, and by the way, we promote New Zealand, for a contrast between sweet and salty that is, I say, irresistible. When you try it, that contrast is simply spectacular. And if you want to use cooking, I'm going to give you a recipe to include Tomme de Savoie, and I'm referring to tartiflette savoyarde, which is a potato gratin, just like the reblochon, which includes onion, potatoes, bacon, and of course, Tomme de Savoie. How is the recipe? Very easy. Start by peeling and slicing the potatoes into about 1 centimeter thick slices. Use around 1.5 kilos of potatoes, okay? Or as the Spaniards say, patatas, and you can also use white sweet potatoes, the sour ones anyway. Boil them for about 15 minutes until tender but still firm. Then drain them and set them aside. Meanwhile, cut about 200 grams of smoked pork belly or bacon into thick strips and brown them until crispy. Add 1 large, finely chopped onion and sauté until it becomes translucent and slightly caramelized, not fully caramelized. Then add a minced garlic clove to enhance the aroma and above all, the flavor. And that's it. In a previously greased container, spread a first layer of potatoes, okay, and place the mixture of bacon and onion on top, repeating the layers until you reach the top of the container. Then, pour 200 milliliters of liquid cream, or you can also use cooking cream, mixed with 100 milliliters of dry white wine from Savoie or a regular dry white wine. Then for the last layer, cut about 450 grams of Tomme de Savoie cheese into slices, or you can also grate it, right? And bake everything at 200 degrees Celsius for about 20 to 25 minutes, or until the surface of the tartiflette starts to bubble and is golden. It will be bubbling and golden because the melted cheese will start to burn, so that's called gratin. So, when it is gratinated, you leave it ready, okay? And here I'm going to give you a tip. When you take it out of the oven, let it rest for a few minutes before serving so that the tartiflette is ready to eat, okay? And serve it with a fresh green salad and a glass of Savoie white wine or a dry white wine. Okay, you can use an apremont or a roussette, which balance the richness of the cheese and the creaminess of the dish. And before we finish, let me tell you a curiosity that will make you see Tomme de Savoie cheese with different eyes. Did you know that this cheese has a lost brother that is made just like Tomme de Savoie, but with a totally different result? I'll tell you now. I tell you that the lost brother of Tomme de Savoie is called Tomme Crayeuse, which is a cheese made with a similar process, but with a creamier texture in the center. The difference between the two cheeses lies in making small adjustments in the aging process, which shows how the art of cheese can vary greatly with a small adjustment in the process. And here goes another curiosity. In some villages of Savoie, the tradition of identifying each wheel of Tomme still exists, because there are several types of Tomme with symbols carved into the rind of the cheese. This practice dates back centuries to know which farm each cheese came from. And if you enjoyed this journey through the Alps with Tomme de Savoie, I invite you to subscribe. And tell me in the comments if you dare to try it with cider or with wine, or if you simply prefer a classic pairing, or maybe you feel encouraged to make it. Let me know in the comments and count on me to help you with the preparation. Well, that's it for now. Bye.